And what I came up with is that I actually have a fear of confrontation with people. And this is something that will make me not speak when I should speak. It'll make me go okay when actually I don't want to do something.
Okay.
And I think this came, my first marriage was very violent and unpleasant. And I was with that person for 5 years, and confrontation was dangerous. So what the ego does is it looks at something that was dangerous and says, anytime I see something like that, I'm going to back away because it's safer to back away. So this is how the ego will play out in me, for example. That traumatic and dangerous 5 years has made me very vigilant against confrontation, or what the ego says is dangerous situations where someone's going to attack me or judge me. So that's something that I'm working on. And I always recognize it because the mind starts working. It starts to look for an escape hatch. It wants to get away. It doesn't want to deal with it. But really, the ego is not a bad thing. So in that circumstance, my ego is trying to keep me safe. It actually is not evil.
That's the purpose,
That's its purpose. We want to keep you alive. And so the course teaches this. The ego is directly associated with survival of the physical body. So the ego and the physical body go together. So when you have something that threatens your physical survival, the ego will be triggered and it will start to try and make you do things. It could make you attack somebody. It could make you run away. It could make you lie. It could make you cheat, because it's trying to get you in the best situation possible for survival. So that's how I really look at the ego. When it gets triggered, I go, okay, good. This is something unconscious that's becoming conscious. Can I figure out what the message is? Can I figure out what's happening? So in this particular circumstance, the assignment I've given myself is to say what I want to the business people, and to be honest and authentic and not fearful, so that I'm facing my ego's fears and I'm dissolving its story, which is confrontation is dangerous. So that's the story my ego has. Confrontation is dangerous. So what I'm coming at this with is, now I'm going to resolve this calmly, because intellectually I understand I'm not under threat, but my ego is acting as if it is under threat. So that's just kind of a little microcosm of the way I use the course and the way I respond to the ego getting triggered. So the best thing to do is, when your ego gets triggered, you say, oh, this is really good. This is important to my ego. It thinks survival is dependent on this, or its desire for judgment has been triggered, and that's really how the ego initially manifests. It will be very judgmental. These are bad people. They shouldn't have done that. I'm not going to do this. And it wants to get into a battle. So that's a little microcosm of
Thank you for sharing your insights. That's really, really appreciated. 2 questions before we finish, because the time is flying. One is about feminism. Jesus, in the book, Jesus, my autobiography, he declares himself as a feminist, but obviously it's not the 21st century feminism.
No.
So what is your opinion about 21st century feminism for the young women that are listening this
Well, this is a very interesting subject, because I always was, I was in the workforce in my 20s, in the late 70s, early 80s. So, for example, I'll give you an example. I was a cartographer, so I drew maps and did aerial photography interpretation in my 20s. Mostly not a girl's job, mostly guys did this. And so in the office, if the secretary would go for lunch, they'd ask me to answer the phone. They wouldn't ask the guys to answer the phone. They would ask me to answer the phone, and I would say, I don't do phones. Ask somebody else. So I would say no to this, because at that time in the workforce, you know, women were just coming into the workforce and they were kind of being put into the less valued jobs, answering the phone, making the coffee. And I'd say, no,
Right, yeah.
so I would consider myself a feminist back in those days. I am a mother of two children. They're men now. They're 27 and 31. And I think going through motherhood and having children, and also seeing society's, I'll say the degradation of the family through kids being raised in childcare, you know, both parents working.
Mhm.
I think we're starting to see that the negative effects of the family being less cohesive.
Yeah.
What I think is the best thing is what Jesus did. He said he loved and respected Mary for the things that she was good at, and
Yeah.
he provided a certain kind of contribution to the family. She provided a certain kind of contribution to the family. And for anyone who's given birth to children, they know that this is a massive undertaking, and physically you are for years dedicated to the survival and well-being of those children. I was very fortunate. I didn't have to put my children in daycare. I was an artist at the time, and I was able to work at home, and my husband and I did 50-50. So
Mhm.
I made a good living from my art. So I would work for 3 or 4 hours a day. Then he would go to work. So my children always had one of two parents with them. So to me, that's the ideal, is that you have a partner that respects your what a woman brings to the table. After all, we are a channel for the divine, in the sense that we can bring children through, which is the most creative job on the planet. So I think it deserves respect and love. And the power within the family needs to be equitable, in the sense that if you're at home with the children, just because you're not making any money or as much money does not mean that what you're doing is not valued. And I think it's the value on female work and female qualities that is lacking in sort of a more traditional patriarchal structure. So I kind of look at the way I raise my kids. And what happened with my kids was they had a great relationship with their father, because he
Which is
spent
good.
time with them.
Yeah.
And they're young and they're men. So they need to have a good, father figure.
Yeah.
Now, I was a real feminist. My children have my surname. They don't have
Oh,
their father's surname,
that is unusual.
because he had two children in a previous marriage
Yeah.
that had
Okay.
his name. So I said, well, then these two get my name. And he went along with it. So I was a feminist, but I think it has to be, I think real feminism is valuing both the masculine and the feminine, their
Yeah.
differences, and what they bring to the table, and collaborating together,
Yeah.
rather than seeing someone as the enemy